All right. So now we're going to get into lighting. And one of the things about lighting is, in comparison to real world lighting, 3D modeling and 3D software doesn't follow the same rules as real life lighting as it does in the 3D software. There's all types of different kind of rules we can break with lighting in 3D software. And I'm going to go ahead and start showing you how to use lighting, but also so it works with our renderer, our Arnold renderer. So we're going to start by creating, under the Arnold tab, we're going to go Arnold, Lights, and we're going to do a sky dome light. Now, what this is, if you zoom out, it's pretty much just a like a light simulated world, give or take. And you'll notice it's pretty bright. I'm in light mode now, so 4, 5, 6, and then 7. And what this does is we can adjust some settings in here, but for the most part, my attribute editor, you can adjust the intensity so it's not as bright. I think I'll try something like along the lines of 0.4 to start. And then the other thing I want to do is I just want to go ahead and test a render. Now this should allow us to render just fine now. Arnold. And this might sort of mess up my screen capture, so this might glitch out a little bit on the recording. I'm not sure, so we'll go ahead and see what happens. Okay. And it's adjusting the materials for me. Okay, and it's rendering on a separate screen. Let me see if I can drag it over. Okay. So I think it is done rendering. We're getting some kind of weird shadows in here. But for the most part, it's starting to look pretty good. Now, some other things, cast shadows, we can look into. I don't want any light filters. We're not going to get into too many crazy details on this particular lighting. Just the fact that as long as it works, you can always up the resolution also. We're good with that, because I don't want you to start adding a ton of sort of extra. So if you do more volume samples, your render will turn out nicer. But I want you to keep it low to save processing power on your computer, because this does take a lot of processing. And that should be about it for this particular light. Now, I'll go ahead and try one more time to see if that will adjust the shadows on it drastically. And you should see something like this happening. And it's still going. And you'll see it sort of renders out blocks at a time. And I believe it might be done rendering now. Alright. just trying to make sure that it is. Alright, so it's close enough even if it's not done rendering. We're starting to get some... Ooh. Whoa, okay. I'm getting some lag on my computer. And it's starting to clean up some of those shadows. So rendering can take a very, very long time. I want to go ahead and see what happens here. And yeah, it's still rendering. And I'm starting to see it clean up some of these sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Almost snowy sort of just not clear in the shadow itself. But I did start to get some good shadows down here. Now, one of the reasons could be is because I don't have Arnold materials on these objects, and I would have to go back and change that. And you're seeing it starting to clear up over here. Rendering does take a very long time, by the way, in case you don't already know or haven't already figured that out. And it's starting to come out a little bit better. Now we could sit here and watch my file render for the next, hour or so. I don't know how long it would take to finish cleaning up these little areas, but you can see that it's working. So from this point, let's go ahead and talk about actual lighting. I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave it open for the moment, and I'm just going to put it on my other screen until it's done, finished its processing on the render. Okay. Actually, I had just had to close out of it because it was I wasn't able to really do anything in my file here. So now that I've got that light in there, able to see everything in my scene, I want to go ahead and talk about some other lights. So Arnold has a bunch of lights that they use in here, and they're really neat. But I want to talk about some of these other ones. So the lights over here, the directional light, point light, specifically the directional light. And I'm actually going to just take these objects away from the wall real quick so I can get some lighting behind it. And I'm going to take this light and I'm going to create what is called a 3-point lighting scheme. So one of the first things I want to do is not scale, rotate, do 45, and actually this is going to be something called my key light. And your key light's always your strongest light. And let me find a quick example of how a 3-point lighting scheme works. I have an attached Word document in the Canvas shell that you should be able to locate. Okay. I'm going to go to Images. And 1 second, I'll show you here what I mean. Okay, so we have a 3-point lighting scheme. This is a pretty decent diagram. Now, this is our main subject here, which is this person. Then if you go into the top view, our backlight is here. It says low intensity, but we're gonna, because it's not 3D is not the same as real life lighting. I'm going to show you what we do to get some of these same techniques in here. So you'll see this backlight is actually highlighting right around this person's edge here a brighter color. Our fill light we'll talk about is the is used for all types of different things, specifically to cast shadows. So a camera always needs to have light, otherwise it will not render. If you tried to render your scene without having a light in your Maya file, chances are it rendered entirely black, and that's because there was no lights. Now the other thing is we have our key light here. Our key light is our strongest light. Typically it's the most powerful light. In our case, we're going to change some of these settings because we don't abide to the same rules as real life lighting. And our fill light, let's just say in night scenes that you see on TV or in film or video games or wherever, typically they have a blue filter over this, and then it'll cast a light blue shadow. It's actually a light, but it appears to be a shadow, and it's just a little trick. So it looks like it's shadowed, but however, the light itself is sort of simulating the shadow, even though it's not a shadow at all. So you'll see it a lot in night scenes where they use a blue filter over this, and I'm going to cover that with you also. Now, going back to the file, this is my key light. Then I'm going to duplicate this light, Control D, and I'm going to rotate this light here, and I'm going to make this light 0.5, and I'm also going to change the color of it in my attribute editor. I'm going to change it to blue. 5, 6, and then 7. You're starting to see some of that blue color coming in. And the last thing I want to do, because I'm going to render the sword as my main subject, and even though I don't have a texture on it or anything, okay, and I turned off my lighting for now. It's sort of making my system slower. Oh, there we go. And this is going to be my backlight. Alright. And in this particular, I'm not sure how it'll work with the Arnold renderer, but this one's usually a lot stronger to get that look that we're going for. What I'm showing you is actually what is called, I'm using my backlight to create what is called a rim light. And the example here does show you a rim light, and also in the Word document I provide, a rim light is right here, showing the just showing a brief rim of bright light around the main subject. So I'm going for that. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to turn out yet. Hopefully good. And I'm just going to go ahead and do Arnold, and using my camera. Another thing we can do, and I had actually maybe should have done this first, but no big deal. We're going to go create and create camera. And now with our camera, I'm going to go ahead and bring this over, and I'm going to show you something really quickly. I'm going to go into my 4-point view here, 4 viewport panel view, and I'm going to, in my top view, because I don't really need my top view that much, I'm going to go to my panel, perspective, and switch this to camera 1. And now on my camera 1, I'm going to use it to sort of stage out my camera. And I kind of like having the shield in there, so I'm going to sort of do something like this. And then the other thing I want to do is under View, Camera Settings, we're going to do Resolution Gate. We get our resolution gate here. Now, under Rendering, under our Rendering tab, I'm going to show you how you can change this. We're in a, I believe it's 16:9 aspect ratio, and if we go Render Settings, we can change it here to HD 720, which will be 1280 by 720, and that will make it a little bit higher resolution, and it'll also increase the render time slightly. So you can keep it, if your computer's being kind of slow, keep it at a lower setting like HD 540. I'm going to try HD 720. I'm going to hit close, and then I want to sort of stage this out so I have a decent idea of what it'll look like. And I'm going to go ahead and try this. And the first thing I'm going to do is save it. And I'm going to call this midterm lighting demo midterm. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and render. Ooh. And really quickly, if you press escape, it should cancel your render. In my render settings, renderable camera, I forgot to mention, under renderable camera, change that to camera 1, and then go ahead and close. And then let's do a render again. And I'm going to exit that really quickly. And do something like that. And I was just adjusting my view. And you're seeing I'm getting that blue casted shadow, imposing that it's sort of like a night scene. It's being blocked by the book, so that's where you're seeing this over here. And then get a strong light, a rim light right around this object, but it doesn't seem to be happening, which isn't a, it's no big deal. But I'm going to go ahead and hit exit or escape to cancel my render. And sometimes this object isn't necessarily the greatest for it, so I'm going to create one more object just to show you. And in here, I'm going to bring the size down a little bit. Oop. I'll put it right over here. Okay, and now I'm starting to see that rim light. Hopefully it'll appear in the render. I'll make it a little bit brighter. And just for this, I'm going to do render, instead of Arnold render, I'm going to do render current frame. And this should render from my perspective view camera that I'm currently in. I just canceled it, I think. So I was pressing escape to cancel the render. It seemed like it was really bogging down my system. So the idea of it is to get this rim light. If you're unable to get a clean render or something like that, just submit a screenshot that you're getting something similar to this. And that's all I have for this particular lab. If you want to go ahead, one of the requirements on the midterm is to have this sword textured, as well as the bookshelf and the barrel and crates should have full texture, so now would be a great time to do that. And that's all I have for this particular lab. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. We covered a lot of information, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks for watching.